The word "they" is often used to lay blame on the perpetrators. This is usually followed by the question, who are they? According to ancient history, religion, mythology, and occult tradition, they are not human, and they have been manipulating humanity from the shadows for millennia.
They are practicing Babylonianism, Talmudism. That's what they practice. That's the spirituality they practice. They have put an umbrella to be in secret, to remain in secret, that they're practicing Ashkanazi Jews, that they've taken on the Abrahamic Jewish faith. That's what they say. What they're actually doing is practicing Satanism, but they're telling everyone and they're appearing to everyone that they're practicing one of the three Western religions.
Hey guys, welcome back to Highly Motivated. Today we are going to be discussing one of the most powerful groups you've probably never heard of. The name of this group is the Khazarian Mafia. Now we're going to be discussing where they came from and who they've turned into in present day. Without further ado, let's get started. The videos that we are going to watch today come from a much longer documentary that is found on YouTube. The channel is Chuck Swindle, and it is called The Khazarian Mafia, The God Eaters, Part 2. And I'm going to link the video in the description too, so if you guys are interested in watching the whole 2.5 hour long documentary, feel free. But this is just to get your mind going, and I personally had never heard of this Khazarian Mafia, and I know that I must not be the only one, so let's go.
Once you start waking up from the hypnotic trance of the official lie, the word "they" is often used to lay blame on the perpetrators. This is usually followed by the question, who are they? According to ancient history, religion, mythology, and occult tradition, they are not human, and they have been manipulating humanity from the shadows for millennia. The Gods of Eden by William Bramley does an excellent job of tracing this back through all of recorded history. But let's just start from the late 19th century. Just over a century ago, it was known that giants with red hair and double rows of teeth once inhabited America. These 9-foot-tall giants were written about casually in 1874 by Abraham Lincoln. A few years later, the Smithsonian Institute began confiscating giant mummies and skeletons by the thousands. In 1886, the exclusive Jekyll Island Club was founded and built upon an ancient burial site of the Timucua tribe, who were said to be giants. In 1910, the Federal Reserve banking conspiracy was hatched on Jekyll Island between the Rothschild banking dynasty and the Rockefeller family, whose cabin there was known as Mound Cottage and said to have been built upon a sacrificial altar. These powerful families worked together to hide the truth of our mysterious past, and they built a modern society with poison to keep us dumb and lies to keep us confused. The Rothschild dynasty and the Federal Reserve banking system funded all sides of the First and Second World Wars, which paved the way for the creation of the United Nations in 1945. Funded by the Rockefellers, the UN was the beginning of today's de facto world government. The Nuremberg trials resulted with only 12 sentenced to death and 7 sent to prison. The majority were allowed to professionally continue their criminal activities. Nazis who were tried for medical experiments involving cruelty and murder were later brought into Big Pharma through Operation Paperclip, and an entire team of Nazi rocket scientists were brought in to start NASA. While the Nuremberg trials may have been mostly theater, they had their revelations. It was revealed that the Nazi eugenics program stemmed from organizations in America funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and its offshoots. And it was revealed that many high-ranking Nazis believed they were in contact with an alien race known as the Aryans, the same mythical race that allegedly created Hinduism as it is known today. While many Hindu scholars dismissed the claim, the Nazis believed it. It is why they adopted the popular Hindu swastika. They also studied the Vedas, and their most classified project, the Bell, had the same design as the Vimana spacecraft described in these ancient texts. In 1971, a young Klaus Schwab, son of a Nazi nuclear scientist, was placed as the head of what is now known as the World Economic Forum by his mentor, Henry Kissinger. In 1974, Rockefeller protege Henry Kissinger wrote National Security Memorandum 200 for the United Nations. This is popularly known as the Kissinger Report and is one of the foundational documents of the depopulation agenda unfolding today, with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum acting as the tip of the spear. And so who are they? Several will say it's the Rothschild family, but they seem to work for the crown. Others argue that the Vatican holds more sway. Many people insist it's the Jesuits, and some swear it's the Jews. According to occult records, a character named Sanat Kumara rules over the world from inside the earth, along with a group known as the Great White Brotherhood, 7 in total. Helena Blavatsky says these 7 Kumaras are the same as the 7 Dhyanis, the 7 archangels, and the 7 Elohim, the 7 representing the 7 sisters, also known as the Pleiades star cluster. NASA, which was started by Nazis, Freemasons, and Satanists, has been obsessed with both Pleiades and Orion ever since the Apollo moon missions. According to hundreds of alien abductees, that is where most aliens claim to be from. 2 different factions, one to help liberate humanity and the other to enslave us. It is the oldest story on Earth. Good versus evil, the darkness and the light, the white hats and the black hats. It is a struggle within each one of us and is unfolding in the world around us for all to see. A more beneficial inquiry might be, who am I?
So that's a pretty small introduction. I feel like most of us here over in the Highly Motivated family are aware of pretty much everything that they just said in that video, right? None of this is new. But what's new to me is this Khazarian Mafia. It was definitely a name that I had not heard while referencing the power structures of the world, right? We have heard of the Rockefellers, we've heard of the Rothschilds, we've heard of the Corleones, and we've heard of the Ashkanazi Jews. We've heard every one of those stories. But for some reason, this Khazarian Mafia. So we're going to get a little bit deeper into what this group is all about.
Okay, the present-day Khazarian Mafia, KM, he uses the letters KM for Khazarian Mafia all through this, so that's what KN is. The present-day Khazarian Mafia, KM, knows that it cannot operate or exist without abject secrecy, and therefore has spent a lot of money having its history excised from the history books in order to prevent citizens of the world from learning about its evil beyond imagination that empowers the world's largest organized crime cabal.
So this explains why the majority of us have never ever heard of this organization.
Now, what you've got to understand, let me make a little correction here. What you've got to understand is the reason why you don't know anything about the KM is because they have erased themselves from history. They have buried themselves in other histories.
In other
so
history.
Just like,
you know, that sounds familiar.
Western religion appropriated pagan traditions and buried those pagan traditions underneath its umbrella of Western traditional spirituality. So nobody knows anything about the pagan history for the most part. Nobody knows that the annual rituals and the celebrations and so forth are based on pagan rituals. That's why Easter is still chosen by the moon. And so the average everyday Westerner has no idea that their symbolism is buried in paganism. Okay, and in the same way, when you look at history, buried underneath the history they've given you, you have no idea what actual history is, because the Khazarian Mafia have buried it under wars, have buried it under failed societies.
Resets.
And so what is lost is the true history, and you're given this pseudo history that the Khazarian Mafia has basically indoctrinated you with.
And written for you. Now, this to me explains the inconsistencies in a lot of the origin stories for very, very large buildings.
Indoctrinated me with, us all, because we all were trained under their systems, and I've got a video for that too. I hope we have time for all the stuff that I've got coming.
This is why I had to condense.
That connected the dots and made the actual discovery of the presence of the KM's secret history and blood oath to take revenge on Russia for helping Americans win the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and their blood oath of revenge against America and Americans for winning these wars and sustaining the Union. I have underlined that for a very critical reason, and that is for you to know why, for the last however many decades, you have heard a constant repeating of Russia, 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 anti-Russia, Russia's the bad guy, Russia is evil, Russia is terrible, Russia is destroying the world, on and on and on it goes. Okay? And all of us were buried within that inculcated idea that Russia is the source of all evil. Now, what you need to understand is Russia played a critical war in keeping the Khazarian Mafia from taking over the world. They played a critical role in keeping the Khazarian Mafia from taking over the world. And we're going to outline that, but this hatred of Russia goes all the way back to when they told the Khazarian society, you're either going to worship one of these three religions or we're going to destroy you. And then they went in and destroyed them 100 years later, because they didn't stop. We're going to get to that. And that was the seed. The seed of hatred for Russia was born right there when Russia came in and destroyed ancient, original Khazaria, right there between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Okay, and drove them out and drove them into Bohemia. And we'll get into that. Okay, so looking on our little timeline here, this is now past the timeline I had before. This is a new timeline. And I have the ages written down. You can see there at the bottom it says Dark Ages, Reformed Age, Industrial Age, and Modern Age. These are the ages, the themes that carry society through time. And they're underneath these themes because these are the prevailing technology, the prevailing force, the prevailing energy that is driving these societies. And that's why you had the Stone Age, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age. It is that metallurgy that's driving the power of that society. And so in the same way, you now have here in these next ages, look here, you have the Middle Dark Ages. What is happening in the Middle and Dark Ages? Knowledge is kept from the people. When you keep people outside of truth and outside of information, you keep them in the dark. And who drove the Dark Ages? The Catholic Church drove the Dark Ages because they hid the truth.
Yes.
They hid the truth that it is all within you. And they buried it. This is going to be getting into the stuff that's going to be really hard for a lot of people to hear. And I really hope you have the stomach and the perseverance to listen through this, because this is really critical in understanding how the Khazarian Mafia have hid themselves, because they hid themselves within the Catholic Church.
In 313, Emperor Constantine proclaimed the Edict of Milan. The edict approved Christianity as a legal religion of Rome and gave legal privileges and immunity from military duty and taxes to the Christian clergy. There was the political goal of Constantine underlying such kinds of preferential treatment. It was Mithraism, the sun worship religion, that was diffused throughout Rome. But all the Roman emperors deified themselves and enforced people to worship them.
And listen, we are basically a continuation, in my opinion, of Rome.
Some of the nobility were fascinated by the Egyptian mystery religion. So, Rome suffered from religious dissension within itself. At this, Constantine tried to make the best use of Christianity that had spread throughout the whole region of Rome, despite all sorts of persecution. This was because he thought that Christianity could solidify his empire. By approving Christianity as the national religion of Rome, Constantine tried to seek the unity of the Roman Empire under one religion. Thanks to Constantine's pro-Christian policies, many believers of the polytheistic religions of Rome streamed into the Christian church. This tightened Constantine's political grip, and Christianity positioned itself as the religion of Rome, expunging persecution and contempt it had received so far. However, the indiscreet conversion they did without having any kind of understanding or faith, rather produced an adverse effect, the influx of pagan customs into the church.
Do me a favor. Look up the pagan holy days or pagan ritual days and compare them with Christian holidays. And you're going to see something that is extremely disturbing. And it just reminds me that the religious establishment was against Jesus. They were against every single thing that Jesus had to say. They were all about organized religion and about control. And so we need to remember that if we find ourselves stuck in like a specific denomination that, I mean, even Jesus was non-denominational. We have to remember that. He was, I guess you would say, anti-denomination, right? Like,
those who were tainted with polytheism of Rome looked as if they had converted, but in actuality it wasn't easy for them to get rid of the religious rites and institutions of worshiping the sun, the moon, and the stars.
does that sound like having a form of godliness but denying the power?
And various gods and goddesses, which they had worshipped since their forefathers. The church in Rome sought for solutions to disburden the pagans when they converted to Christianity. It was to bring in things similar to the gods that the pagans had believed into the church. They thought they would increase the number of pagan converts by doing that. For the Christian bishops introduced, with but slight alterations into the Christian worship, those rites and institutions by which formerly the Greeks and Romans and others had manifested their piety and reverence towards their imaginary deities, supposing that the people would more readily embrace Christianity if they perceived the rites handed down to them from their fathers still existing unchanged among the Christians. To attract more pagans, the church in Rome tried to Christianize various kinds of pagan gods to suit the Bible. One of the most representative things among them was accepting pagan customs of the sun god worship tradition. The church in Rome identified Jesus with the sun god.
all of those images, what happened to no graven images?
Inside of the church was decorated with various kinds of sun images, and the idea to worship
Did you see that black sun? By the way, I'm doing my best not to say a super whole lot because I have so much video that I want to get through.
the sun was established as if it were the truth of the church.
Okay, so by knowing this, that the Khazarian Mafia hid inside the Catholic Church, it's important to understand not only why that happened, but how that happened. And that is exactly what this map and this lecture is going to begin to show you. AD 100, an incredibly evil society emerges in Khazaria. Khazarians developed into a nation ruled by an evil king who had ancient Babylonian black arts, occult oligarchs, serving as his court. His priests, okay, it's my opinion, that his priests, the Khazarian priest, or excuse me, the Khazarian leader, his court priests, magic men, shaman, were likely Amalekites. That's my opinion, because it's the Amalekites that were honing and learning more and more about the phyla, the pharmacological chemicals that are within the plant kingdom, which again comes out of Esau, the man of the field. Okay, so the Amalekites are carrying this magic, this hallucinogenic magic, this plant magic, this spiritual magic, this evil magic, straight out of Khazaria, or straight into Khazaria from the Levant. There's magic going on at the high echelon of these societies. You see it in Pharaonic Egypt. You see it now in Khazaria.
Now, remember, magic is indistinguishable. What is it? Technology is indistinguishable from magic. So we really need to remember that magic to them was just a way of, like, everyday life. That was their technology. And I would say that back then they would look at our cell phones, our Wi-Fi, and they would say black magic, sorcery. So remember that.
And it was also in Babylon when Talmudism was developed, and they're running on human sacrifice. This Babylonianism that is this dominator culture, war-oriented, consuming culture that is basically birthing these evil societies. Okay?
Now, what he just described, does our culture really sound that much different?
That's a timeline. That's the magic that prevails through these groups. During this time, Khazarians become known to surrounding countries as thieves, murderers, road bandits, and for assuming the identities of those travelers they murdered as a normal occupational practice and way of life. And that's the key to know.
Before we move on to the next section, I just want to read what this says. During this time, Khazarians become known to surrounding countries as thieves, emperors, road bandits, and for assuming the identities of those whose lives they took as a form of occupational practice and way of life. So it became ingrained into their culture to infiltrate systems, cultures, religions, and assume the identities of these particular groups, organizations, and religions with the sole purpose of completely corrupting it from the inside out. Now, that's 100% satanic, if you ask me. All right, let's continue on.
100 years later, remember the trade routes open in 1 BC, 800, so 900 years later or AD 800, so 800 years later, an ultimatum is delivered by Russia. The leaders of the surrounding nations, especially Russia, have had so many years of complaints by their citizens that as a group they deliver an ultimatum to the Khazarian king. They send a communique to the Khazarian king that he must choose one of the 3 Abrahamic religions for his people and make it his official state religion and require all Khazarian citizens to practice it, and socialize all Khazarian children to practice that faith. The Khazarian king was given a choice between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The Khazarian king chose Judaism and promised to stay within the requirements laid out by the surrounding confederacy of nations, led by the Russian Tsar. Now, this is going to get critical to understanding how they've hidden themselves, in that they have hidden themselves underneath this guise called the Ashkanazi Jew. And they are not practicing Ashkenazi Jews. They are practicing Babylonianism, Talmudism. That's what they practice. That's the spirituality they practice. They have put an umbrella to be in secret, to remain in secret, that they're practicing Ashkenazi Jews, that they've taken on the Abrahamic Jewish faith. That's what they say. What they're actually doing is practicing Satanism, but they're telling everyone, and they're appearing to everyone, that they're practicing one of the three Western religions. And again, look at the pattern. You see the same thing happen in the Catholic Church. They tell you that they're a Western religion that's embraced the idea of Jesus and forgiveness and sin and the remuneration of sin and so on and so forth. But underneath that umbrella is pure Satanism. Just like the tunnels that are underneath the Vatican, they were there long before there was the organized church. It's because these people were already practicing this down in the tunnels underneath, the caverns underneath the ground.
The whole time.
Because they have to remain in secret. They can't do these things out in the open. They have to do them in secret, because they know if normal everyday folks that are not brainwashed with this Satan worship won't allow for it. They won't stand for it. People
and I hate, there's a lot of people who are pro-choice, but I hate to break it to you. They have convinced you to, by proxy, allow them to sacrifice your unborn. They've convinced us that it's just a medical procedure.
People will stop it, so they know they have to hide it. Okay, so that's exactly what the Russian Tsar does. Okay, now looking here again at our map, you can see there the Russian principalities, they've given them warning, and this is what happens. Despite his agreement and promise, the Khazarian king and his inner circle of oligarchs kept practicing ancient Babylonian black magic, also known as secret Satanism. This Satanism involved occult ceremonies featuring child sacrifice after bleeding them out, drinking their blood. I put that in quotes because it's a literal statement. After bleeding them out, drinking their blood, and eating their hearts. The deep, dark secret of the occult ceremonies was that they were all based on ancient Baal worship, also known as worship of the owl. Now
you can see where this is going.
I'm going to begin to make a connection here for you. Now,
yeah.
Worship of the owl. Have you all ever heard of a place called Bohemian Grove? It's a real place in Sonoma County. It's a real place. And it's a place where these people go to carry out fake sacrifices, because they obviously can't have real sacrifices there out in the open, because it wouldn't be tolerated. And so they carry out fake sacrifices at this place as sort of a mock celebration of what they're doing, and it's a mockery of us.
And it's a mock celebration to celebrate what they do in secret. So just because they're not doing it at their once a year celebration does not mean that these things aren't happening behind closed doors.
What I wanted you to notice is, and to believe something as outlandish as what I've just told you, first of all, look at these pictures. So we have the owl, and we know owl to these people is Baal, Molech. This is Satan, okay? They're putting a costume over the god they're actually worshiping. So they're worshiping Satan, but they can't have a giant Satan in this public park. So they anthropomorphize Satan into an owl. And why do they use Satan as the owl symbol? Because the owl is silent. The owl hunts at night. The owl can see at night. The owl is able to fly without making any noise. Owls, I don't know if you know this, but owls have little tufts of down on the ends of their plumage, so that as they fly through the air, the sharp plumage that causes turbulence doesn't cause turbulence because of the little soft down-like feathers that are on the edges of these feathers. And so they literally can fly without making one sound because there's no turbulent noise that comes off of their wings. Okay, these people love these kind of ideas. This idea that they can deceive others by secretly passing through the night, through the unknown, and capture people.
This is the United States of America, believe it or not.
Wait until you hear this. This part blew my mind. I had to make sure that I put it in here for you guys.
No, I have no idea how to draw. But
Okay, that's the U.S.
What I'm going to tell you is this. We know where all the rat lines are and where they go. What is a rat line?
Traffic line.
It's a trafficking line.
What is it? A rat?
Rat.
This one actually
Mouse,
splits.
rat.
Rat.
A rat line.
Known
Up the
trafficking
East Coast and up the Hudson River. There's actually 5 main trafficking lines. This one kind of goes mainly actually from Louisiana, Alabama, so Florida's like that. Right in here, there's another one that goes up. There's 5 trafficking lines in the United States, rat lines. What if I was to tell you something like this? I wasn't going to do this till Sunday. But what if I was to tell you that there is an attorney who has an office in Poughkeepsie, New York, and an office in Bellevue, Washington. Same attorney. And he's partnered with an attorney out of Bellevue and an attorney out of here. And what if I told you that out of this office, he created over 100 corporations to traffic children? I'm talking about entertainment companies that take pictures, lodging companies, short and long distance trucking companies, even an airline that's stationed at Boeing Field.
That's enough infrastructure to operate an entire TRA trafficking operation. And he said the man is a lawyer. So he also knows the ins and outs of the law.
Offering companies, you have to have all elements of trafficking.
Yeah, right.
So you have to have transportation, logistics, offerings, okay? 5x5 entertainment, Wild Child Entertainment. Corporations like that, he's set up. What if I told you he set them up under mostly aliases names, but we have the real names too? What if I told you he set them up for people who are police officers, county commissioners, and judges?
I'd believe it.
Okay?
I read Frank on the cover.
What about you guys? Would you believe it? Do you believe it? I do.
Now, what if I told you the same attorney in the state of New York owns 17 child protective services agencies in the state of New York? And he also owns 17 family courts. He owns the Spafford Center, which traffics children to Jerusalem and the United Kingdom. What if I told you I had pictures of 2 American boys with a Hezbollah boy over in Jerusalem carrying AK-47s, and one's 7 and one's 11. And I know where family they came from here in America.
What? Now, do you see why they want you guys focusing on the aliens? They want you thinking that Area 51 is full of extraterrestrials. I've heard of various things that are going on in Area 51 that don't have anything to do with extraterrestrials and everything to do with the TRAF-ficking of young ones.
What if I told you in 1983 he bought a company from William Casey's law firm? The DOD guy is going to start scribbling here when I mention names. I'm serious. William Casey. Who was William Casey? He was the head of the OSS before it became the CIA. He was our first CIA director, and then he ran the SEC.
Securities and Exchange Commission?
Yes.
That's not a conflict of
helps.
They're
interest.
stacked deep.
Helped set up our whole birth certificate fraud thing. He also started the Spafford Center under a different name back in the 30s, and he died in 1975, and in 1983, this attorney bought it from Casey's law firm. It's a corporation sole. Does anybody know what a corporation sole is? It's a corporation that's started so old that is grandfathered into under all laws.
That's what that means.
It's a powerful corporation.
Oh,
A corporation
jeez.
sole. It was owned by William Casey.
Wasn't Casey murdered? Or no?
I wish he was. Anyway, and he can take children out of New York City or any other county that he has one of his 17 agencies. He can show up at your house with a cop, kick in your door. His CPS agents take a kid, jump you through a bunch of parental hoops, terminate your parental rights through his own judges and his own guardian ad litems and his own, and he's licensed by
Yep.
the state to do business.
And the cuter your kid, the more likely this situation could occur.
He's protected under the commerce laws. He's
Commerce
sanctioned by the
laws,
state.
consumer
When you run
laws.
the name of his family services companies on Google, they come up higher than the actual state of New York's family services in the search engines.
Because it's paying to have that.
So if you're going to turn somebody into CPS and you Google it, good chance you're turning into a guy who set up hundreds of pedophile companies.
Ay caramba.
Because they do protect each other.
Now, what do you think about that?
And what I want you to notice is look at the age of these.
Have you ever heard what he just said? I'm like, that is an involved operation. And it's not like it's low level. It's up there. The higher up, the worse they are, I swear.
People. This is a sophisticated society. This isn't a bunch of 20-year-olds and teens that are going to dance around an owl in the middle of a park in Sonoma County. These are adults. Look at how they're dressed. They're wearing suits and ties. Look at and then notice, look at the face of the gentleman on the left there. Smug. They're giving you a smug look. Look at the 1, 2, third guy from the front sitting in the chair. Look at the way he's looking at the camera. It's a smug look. Same with the guy next to him.
Yeah. I
There's
don't
even a
like
guy
it.
smiling back there.
Ew.
You see, these people know, in other words, they know what they're doing. It's my contention, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's my contention that the KM attempted to bring in Hollywood into the presidency using Ronald Reagan. Now, I don't know how deep Ronald Reagan was into this. I think a lot of his presidency, he was just being controlled and used because nobody tells these people what to do. I mean, JFK tried to tell him, and they killed him. So whatever was happening with Ronald Reagan, I think that they were using him as a figurehead. They were trying to bring in someone that was controllable, that all the public already liked, a handsome guy, and a well-speaking, a well-spoken man. He knows how to handle himself in public, and he's very good and adept at having public dialogue, and he can even play different parts. He's an actor. He's good at playing parts, and these kind of human characteristics would be very helpful to a group who's trying to deceive a public, who
Right.
want a figure at the top who's controllable, that's likable, and can play the part. And by sticking Hollywood figures in there, they would be able to even more easily and more fluidly control the public.
Wow. It sounds like once they find something that works, they just don't ever change it, do they?
You can see Richard Nixon, he was neck deep in the whole thing. This is 1955. And then I also threw in a couple extra pictures here. This is 1904. Look at this early picture. They don't even have the owl out yet. Okay? And then here, 20 years later, this is 1924. It says at the bottom right there. I don't know if you can read it. Okay, they're getting more organized. Then look here. This looks to be in like the 50s, about 20, 30 years later. Look how many compared to this one above. The tables are chock full.
Wow.
More tables. I couldn't get a date on this. Maybe somebody knows. But this is the first owl they had. Look at it. And then they brought in this other one. This looks like a paper mache or, poured concrete or something. But they replaced it with this. And I just do that to show you it's developing. Look how they added a whole stage, and there's a sacrificial altar right there at the bottom of the altar. In fact, if you look at the picture that I originated this talk with, there on the bottom right, you can see the fire.
Yep.
And they're doing a sacrifice. That's a sacrifice.
Mock. It's fake.
A mock sacrifice.
Right.
Okay, this is owl worship. This is how they hide from you. This is a high society. That's my point in doing this. This is a high organized society. They're wealthy, nobility.
Yep.
They're bringing in the U.S. president. Okay, these are not your everyday Joe people. These are the folks that are steering and controlling the world. And look at them. They're out there doing mock sacrifices in front of an owl. Folks, that's not coincidence. That's not silly games.
These are the same people that made it okay for them to propagandize us in any way that they seem fit or see fit without it being a crime. So that's also something that you have to keep in mind all the time. They are allowed to lie without there's no recourse. They can say whatever they want. So discernment is real important in today's day and age.
This is what you need to understand. These people are not playing a game. They are dead serious. It's so outlandish that it would seem that this is just a joke. Nobody would ever believe this. That's exactly why they do it. You would never believe it. Okay. In order to fool the Confederacy of Nations led by Russia that were watching Khazaria, the Khazarian king melded these Luciferian black magic practices with Judaism and created a secret satanic hybrid religion known as Babylonian Talmudism. This was made the national religion of Khazaria and nurtured the same evil that Khazaria was known for before. You see, this king is a deceiver, but in his nature. In his nature.
Spirit of the Antichrist.
This religion called Babylonian Talmudism. And what is it? I looked it up. It is a highly racist Zionism. And then to summarize in some statements, it's a superior race theory. Right, they utilize rites of passage. They have exclusive access to God. But see, I capitalize God to say that they're claiming that is who they are worshiping, but they're actually worshiping Satan. Right. So that G would be small. Right. But what they're claiming is that this is God. That's their claiming. So they have exclusive access to this God because of their blood sacrifices, because of their giving themselves to this God completely and doing evil against the hated Goy, which is us. That's what the Talmud people, the Babylonian Talmudism folk, we are the Goy. Meat.
Yes.
We are the meat and cattle. We are their asset to use and destroy and slaughter as they wish. Okay? That's this religion, that's this Talmudism, this Babylonian Talmudism.
That is what they
blood
believe.
sacrifice oriented, meaning that they actually carry that out. Calendar dates obsessed. They're obsessed with their yearly rituals. If you look at the satanic calendar, there are literally festivals, holidays, all kinds of celebrations every single month, are critical celebrations to it. These are people who are oriented to the cosmic.
And you can look up these specific rituals and find out what it is that they prefer to sacrifice, whether it's an adult, an animal, a child, the age. And sometimes they even go as young as infant. And this is all readily available on the internet. So it's not, they don't hide these things.
Time frame, and we're going to get into that when we get to the Saturnalia and Saturn worship. But they are highly oriented to the cosmic time frames. And so they are obsessed with calendar dates and with annual traditions. They're highly tribal. Again, that comes out of the Canaanite stuff. Absolute in opinion and secure in belief system. So their opinion is absolute and final. And secure in belief system, meaning everything they know is centered around their belief system. And they don't care if you believe it or not. This is the system of belief that they subscribe to, you see. Their god is Lucifer, a being composed of pure evil. Okay,
Yes.
we're going to get more and more into this as we keep going.
Okay, so coming up next is the explanation of the Saturn worship and Black Sun worship and how it connects to these people. And now, like I said, he has so much information packed into this 2.5 hour documentary that it was so hard for me to narrow down what parts to include. So, as I've said earlier, I recommend watch this entire thing from the beginning to the end over on his channel, and he has an entire body of work concerning this. Super, super interesting stuff. This is the last clip that I have for you guys from this documentary.
Did you realize this? That's what this symbology means. That's who they're worshiping. This ties you in, okay? Saturn was known and worshipped as the Black Sun, the god of the cosmos, the god of time, the god of death. Time devours all things. Lucifer eats all life. Lucifer, god of the earth.
What we think.
God of the earth. Remember when Satan offered Jesus all of the kingdoms of the earth? He could not have offered what he did not have, what was not his. So that is why we are not to be concerned with the things of this world.
We understand where we came from, what we think we're doing. The more you begin to see we've been lied to. We've been lied to by every institution. What makes you think for 1 minute that the religious institution is the only one that's never been touched? You can bet your bottom dollar that the religious institutions of this world are at the bottom of the dirt. The religious institutions in this world are put there by the same people who gave you your government, your corrupt education. The Knights Templars who set up your international banking cartels in the 12th, 13th, and 14th century are the same people that gave you educational institutions, colleges. Where do we get the word college? College comes from the collegia, the Latin Roman college of cardinals. I could go on for hours just give you examples. I mean, when you graduate, you come out with a square mortar board, a black square mortar board. What's all that about? Black square mortar boards. It has to do with the planet Saturn. Saturn, we're told that in the Old Testament that the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, were worshipers of one God. That's never been true. Not true now and never will be true. That's just one more story that's been given to us. It's never been true. The Hebrew people were worshipers of many gods, many different divine beings. They were the most eclectic theology on the face of the earth. Next to modern day Christianity is Judaism. Eclectic meaning it has collected from all over the world concepts and ideas and put it together and called it today Judaism. Judaism today is the most eclectic religion on the face of the earth. Virtually nothing of what it teaches is true. Virtually nothing of its supposedly background is true. And consequently, the world is filled with violence, bloodshed, or disorder. Good people are dying. There are children who are starving. Our world is in trouble. And people are calling out to God for protection. People are calling out to God to help our nation and never realizing for one moment that the divine presence in the universe not listening. Why? Because you have your own concepts of whatever you think is true, whatever you believe to be true, but you have never confronted the real truth. The real truth is that the people who are in power, who put this system together, have been in power for thousands of years. This has been going on from day one. All of the things which are going on in this world today, from 9/11, all of the wars in the Middle East, all of the incredible bloodshed that's being spilled all over the earth, can be traced back to and you might want to remember what I'm saying here, because I'm sure you're not going to make the connection when I first tell you, but I'm going to try to explain it to you. The things which are happening today, the people who are in power in this country, the great generals from around the world who are planning wars and violence and bloodshed, all of this stuff can be traced back to the planet Saturn. Saturn is a very, very pivotal, important concept in theology and religion. And most people have never been told any of this and have no knowledge of it at all. But the planet Saturn is very important in world affairs, in theology. In the Islamic belief, the holy city of Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia, Mecca has a Masonic circle, and within the Masonic circle is a square, because you got to do everything on the square, remember. You have a town square, you have New York Square, you have Vatican Square, you have Red Square, you have all kinds of squares. Why? Because this is Masonic. And it goes all the way back into the ancient world, the terms and symbols. Again, the planet is called the Black Square. It's called the Dark Sun, the Black Sun. This is what the Nazis and the SS and the Gestapo wore black. That's why priests wear black. That's why judges wear black robes. Why do you think a judge wears a black robe? He wears a black robe because when you used to graduate from university, you wear a black robe. Why black robes? Darth Vader wears a black robe. What the hell does a black robe have to do with anything? The judges wear black robes. You know, Supreme Court judges wear black robes. Black robes represent the priesthood of the planet Saturn, the Saturnalian Brotherhood. All you need to do is study Nazism, and you will begin to see that the powers behind the Nazi Party, the Thule Society, the Germanian Order, were all members of something called the Saturnalian Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Saturn. Saturn was the god of darkness, chaos, and destruction. He teaches you a lesson. He will take your life if you don't listen to him. So consequently, Saturn was very, very important in the ancient world. Thank you. Saturn's name, incidentally, in the old Phoenician ancient Canaanite religion, in the middle.
Now, a lot of the families today have origins in these ancient Canaanite families, the Kardashians being one of them.
East, the old Phoenician Canaanite worship of the planet Saturn was the most important god of all the ancient world, was the planet Saturn, and his symbol, long before the Hebrews were ever in Canaan, the symbol in Cana for the planet Saturn was a six-pointed star. Today we call that star the Star of David. There was no Star of David.
Nope.
It's the Star of Saturn. All of the Jewish reference books, all the Encyclopedia Judaica, you go to the synagogue, go up into Mulholland Drive, up to the Jewish University and spend 3 weeks there and look up Saturn. You'll find out that 98% of all Judaism is a worship of the planet Saturn. Better wake up and understand.
Makes a lot of sense why they would want, why they deny our Messiah.
Understand where this stuff comes from. Because if there is a God in heaven, if there is a divine presence in the universe that demands righteousness and justice, then you're going to have to rethink what we believe and where we're going and what the world is all about, because for the last 2,000 years we haven't done too well.
No.
Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El was the god Saturn in the old Phoenician Canaanite system. And consequently, anyone that promoted the worship of El is where we get the word elder. You become an elder because you were worshiping El. And when you worship El and become an elder, then how did you get to be an elder? You got elected. So therefore we have elections. Now that you have been elected to be an elder, now you are one of the elites.
Oh,
Why?
geez.
Now you have moved up, like in an elevator. You are now moved up in society. Consequently, it's all money. It's all manipulation and exploitation coming out of Phoenicia, Canaan. It goes back to the old Sumerian, Babylonian systems of words and terms and symbols and emblems that have been used to manipulate the whole human race. Because our masters don't give a damn about you or your family or your destiny with God. All they care about is what they have always cared about, and that's controlling the whole damn world.
So there's the black sun on the left. There's the hexagram. There's the hexagon on top of Saturn. And then we have Cronus. What I'm emphasizing here, what I'm trying to show you is, these are all the same thing.
Right.
They all represent Lucifer.
Yes.
They are all symbols for and of Lucifer. That's why they use them. That's why they use this symbology in their worship. It's because they represent, these symbols represent a deeper underlying knowledge. Now look where I found the black sun. I did a search for the black sun.
And not only that, if they convince you that it means something else and they get you worshiping it, you're worshiping Lucifer, whether you think you are or not.
Which means Lucifer and Satan. Look where I found it here in the Hall of SS Generals in, I think that's Wewelsburg Castle, Germany.
Vivel.
Look, it's right there on the floor. It's in the Azov Battalion patch, their rank. And look, they're holding a flag. There's the black sun, the symbol of Nazism there in the middle. The communism is Satanism. Get it? These are not groups, organizations of people that have your best interest in mind, that have the human interest in mind. They are not interested in your betterment. They're interested in controlling you. They're interested in controlling the power, the planet, having all the power.
Yep.
That's why these are militant groups. They're not there to have a dialogue with you. They're there for you to do as you're told, and if you don't do as you're told, you're either killed or imprisoned. Period. You see, these are anti-human groups. This is an anti-human religion. That's why it centers on cannibalism. It is anti-human.
Right.
This mafia, this is their religion. The Khazarian Mafia's religion is Saturnalia, is ancient Saturn worship, worship of the black sun. This is where it gets even heavier. Saturn equals Satan equals the black cube. Satan and the black cube of Saturn. One of the most mysterious symbols in our culture today is the black cube of Saturn. Saturn is not only the hexagram, it is also the cube. Here's why. The black cube is a representation of the planet's north pole, meaning Saturn's north pole, which forms a perfect hexagon with the diameter of each of its 6 sides being very close to the projected diameter of the Earth. The cube is a 3-dimensional representation of the 2-dimensional hexagonal north pole of Saturn. That's why they're related. Look here, from Fritz Springmeier. This is the gentleman that wrote that book, The Illuminati, The Blood of the Illuminati, or that book that talked about the Illuminati. This is the same guy, former FBI, CIA. Saturn is an important key to understanding the long heritage this conspiracy has back to antiquity. The city of Rome was originally known as Saturnia, or City of Saturn. The Roman Catholic Church retains much of the Saturn worship in its ritual.
In fact, Catholic Eucharist and communion is a Saturnalia blood ritual, and a lot of people don't realize that that was the origin of that, not the Last Supper. That's actually not biblical.
Who gave us the Bible? The Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church retains much of the Saturn worship in its ritual. Human sacrifice? Is there a human sacrifice at the center of Western religion? Saturn also relates to Lucifer. In various occult dictionaries, Saturn is associated with evil. Look where else there are black cubes. Australia, Denmark, Manhattan, Santa Ana. Oh, and look, guess what also is a black cube? The Kaaba. That's in Mecca. And look at the rings that form around the Kaaba. These folks don't even realize who they're worshiping. That cube literally represents Satan. The cube, when flattened out, becomes a Christian cross. In Judaism, the six-pointed Star of David represents Satan and originates from Saturn. Orthodox Jews wear the black cube of Saturn on their forehead, like the third eye, and call it tefillin. I don't know.
It makes me wonder if there was something behind them crucifying Jesus on a cross. If that cross is a black cube unfolded. Because Jesus was anti-religion, anti-establishment. His own people that he came to save denied him, wanted nothing to do with him. And that would just be the largest slap in the face that they would probably be able to think of in that time, right?
How to pronounce that. Look how the cube, when you unfold it, it forms a perfect cross. And then we see here, look what's on this dude's head. The black cube. And what does this tell you? Satan is Saturn, is represented in the hexagram, is in the black sun, is the black cube, is the cross. The black cube in Mecca in the occult is called the hypercube. It represents mind control. That's why the TV is black and cube-shaped. The graduation hat is a black cube, etc. It's all mind control. When Muslims walk around the Kaaba in rings, it is a representation of Saturn's rings. Saturn equals Satanism. That is what you're giving your energy to. Same with Christianity. The cross, when folded up, folds into a cube. More mind control. Same with all the other religions, all based in Satanism and created by the dark occult. I'll never forget when I heard Mark Passio. When I heard Mark Passio claim, I'll never forget this, when he claimed that all of Western religion was invented by the Order of the Black Snake. And I remember hearing him say that and thinking, there's no way. There's no way that's true. And what you begin to find out when you begin to study this stuff and you begin to hear guys like, Jordan Maxwell, and you begin to hear the information they have to tell you. Speaking of which, I'll just go to the next slide. You begin to understand that you've been deceived. You've been deceived because this group claimed God, and they claimed they had exclusive access to God, and you had to follow their symbols and rituals to know this God. That's mind control. And it was one of the most difficult characteristics of my life I've ever had to accept, and that is that I have been captured. I've been captured with mind control. And I've been captured with these symbols. I've been captured with these meanings and these traditions and these edicts that, you know, when you're born, you're this way, and you have to do these things to find resolution, and you're apart from God, and you're separated, and all this kind of stuff. Was coming to realize
that we are not apart from God. Our temple, Jesus's temple, is us. We are the body of Christ. He is the head. We are the body. He works through us. Well, guys, that is all that I have for today. I know that was quite a bit of information to take in at one time, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you all very soon, and until next time, stay prayed up and stay highly motivated.